In a world where justice is expected to prevail, what happens when the very protectors of the law become its violators? This is a story of confrontation, identity, and the hard truths that follow. Today, we bring you a true and unsettling account of an incident that began as a routine encounter but turned into a shocking clash between a local police officer and a federal agent. It's an event that raised questions about authority, identity, and accountability. This story isn't just about two individuals caught in a tense moment. It reveals cracks in a system that should ensure equality and justice for all. It's a moment that forces us to look at the broader issues within our society. As we piece together the events leading up to this encounter, you'll witness the unexpected twists, the unfolding aftermath, and the implications that extend far beyond this one moment. Officer James Keller had been with the Metro Police Department for over a decade. Known for his no-nonsense approach, he was both respected and criticized within the force. Beneath his badge, however, was a record that painted a troubling picture. Numerous complaints of racial profiling, use of excessive force, and allegations that seemed to vanish in the bureaucratic maze. Yet, Keller remained on the streets, a figure of authority in a community that had grown wary of him. On the other hand, Agent Marcus Johnson was a rising star in the FBI, an individual who had dedicated his life to upholding the law. For Marcus, the badge was more than a symbol of authority. It was a testament to his perseverance and the battles he had fought as a black man in a predominantly white institution. He had faced discrimination before, subtle comments, overlooked promotions, but never had he imagined his race would make him a target while on the job. It was a typical morning in the bustling streets of downtown Franklin City. Marcus Johnson, dressed in casual clothes to blend into the crowd, was in the midst of a high-stakes operation. A suspected arms dealer was under surveillance, and every moment counted. But as Marcus walked toward his vehicle to relay critical intel, he noticed a patrol car slowing down. Officer Keller stepped out, his gaze locked on Marcus. Something about the way Keller moved, the rigid posture, the firm grip on his baton, spoke volumes. Keller didn't see an FBI agent. He didn't see someone on duty. To him, Marcus was a suspect. He was a threat. Marcus identified himself immediately, calmly pulling out his credentials. "FBI," he said, holding his badge in plain view. But the badge didn't matter. Keller's tone turned aggressive, his accusations escalating. "You think that fake badge will work on me? Hands where I can see them." What should have been a brief interaction turned into a confrontation. Onlookers paused, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. Marcus, realizing the danger of escalation, tried to reason with Keller, but reason had no place here. For Keller, Marcus's words were drowned out by his own assumptions. Nearby, a young woman named Rachel, holding her toddler, watched in disbelief. Her phone was already recording. She later described what she saw. The fear in his eyes. You could tell he wasn't just worried about his operation being compromised. He was afraid for his life. For Marcus, it was surreal. In that moment, he wasn't an FBI agent. He wasn't a man of the law. He was just another black man in America treated as a criminal for the color of his skin. The weight of that reality hit him hard as Keller ordered him to the ground. Others joined Rachel, their phones now pointed at the unfolding scene. The crowd grew tense. Some shouted, urging Keller to stop. A few pleaded with him to check Marcus's idea again. But Keller's focus remained unyielding, his assumptions blinding him to the truth. And then, the defining moment. Rachel's phone captured it all. Keller pushing Marcus against his vehicle, pinning him as Marcus shouted, "I'm FBI! I'm FBI!" The tension reached its peak when Marcus's colleagues, also undercover, rushed in to de-escalate. Their badges were visible, their voices loud. "He's one of us," they yelled. Keller froze, his grip loosening, but the damage was done. The crowd erupted in anger and disbelief. Marcus, bruised and shaken, pulled himself up, locking eyes with Keller. It wasn't just a stare. It was a confrontation of two realities colliding. By the time backup arrived, the footage had already made its way online. Within hours, the video spread like wildfire across social media platforms. It wasn't just another confrontation. It became a symbol, a rallying cry. News outlets picked up the story, dissecting every second of the video. Activists, community leaders, and politicians weighed in. Public outrage was immediate and unforgiving. But the story didn't end with the viral video. What happened behind closed doors in the precinct and within the community was equally revealing. As the investigation into the incident began, deeper questions emerged. How could such a misjudgment occur? What does it say about the systems that allow officers like Keller to remain on duty? And most importantly, what does justice look like in the aftermath of such a failure? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking consequences of this encounter and the truths that would come to light in its wake. The video was undeniable. Officer James Keller's actions were no longer just a matter of witness accounts. They were captured in stark detail, shared millions of times within hours. The city's mayor, flanked by the police chief, issued a press statement. The events depicted in this footage do not represent the values of our department or our city. But words were no longer enough. Under mounting public pressure, Keller was placed on administrative leave. The department promised a thorough investigation, though skepticism ran deep among citizens. For many, this was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern, a pattern that had gone unaddressed for far too long. The crowd outside the precinct grew day by day, demanding accountability not just for Keller, but for a system that allowed such behavior to persist. Inside the FBI, there was equal outrage. Marcus Johnson's colleagues and supervisors rallied behind him. For them, this wasn't just about one of their own being mistreated. It was a breach of professional respect and a dangerous precedent that could jeopardize future operations. "If one of us isn't safe, none of us are," an anonymous agent told reporters. As protests spread across the city, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Trust in the police department was at an all-time low, with citizens questioning the integrity of those meant to protect them. For the FBI, the incident had exposed vulnerabilities in how their agents operated in the field, especially in diverse communities. The pressure wasn't just on the police department. It extended to city officials, federal agencies, and even the national stage. Public hearings were convened. Witnesses, including Marcus Johnson and several bystanders, testified before packed chamber. Marcus's words were measured but powerful. "I wasn't just assaulted as a man. I was assaulted as an agent of the law, as someone who believed in the very system that failed me." His testimony, broadcast live, struck a chord with millions. The case also drew attention from advocacy groups and civil rights organizations. They demanded not only Keller's immediate dismissal, but also a complete overhaul of training protocols, accountability measures, and hiring practices within the police department. "This isn't about one officer," said a community leader. "This is about the culture that allows officers like Keller to thrive. How did it come to this? How could such a blatant act of prejudice occur within law enforcement, an institution sworn to uphold justice and equality? Was it a failure of training, a lack of accountability, or something deeper? And if an FBI agent could face such treatment, what hope was there for ordinary citizens?" These were the questions on everyone's mind. Social media buzzed with debates and calls for action. Town hall meetings turned into passionate discussions about police reform. People began to share their own stories of encounters with law enforcement, adding fuel to an already raging fire. But as the public demanded answers, the police department struggled to regain control of the narrative. Statements about ongoing investigations were met with skepticism. A leaked memo revealed that Keller's history of complaints had been quietly dismissed or buried over the years, intensifying the outcry. The investigation into Keller's actions quickly expanded beyond the single incident. As internal affairs combed through his records, they uncovered a troubling pattern: complaints of racial profiling, unnecessary use of force, and instances where Keller had ignored protocol. These cases had been flagged before, but systemic failures allowed them to fall through the cracks. But Keller wasn't the only one under scrutiny. Investigators began to uncover evidence of a culture within the department that enabled such behavior. Emails and internal communications revealed dismissive attitudes toward minority communities. Training programs were outdated and lacked emphasis on de-escalation or implicit bias awareness. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about one officer, it was about a broken system. As these revelations came to light, the city braced itself for the fallout. The protests grew louder, with signs reading, "Justice for Marcus" and "Reform Now" filling the streets. The tension reached a boiling point as the department prepared to release its findings and announce its next steps. What would justice look like in a case like this? Would Keller face the consequences of his actions? And more importantly, could the city, the police department, and the community begin the long process of rebuilding trust? As the investigation reached its conclusion, the answers to these questions would determine not just the future of one officer, but the future of law enforcement in Franklin City. The investigation into Officer James Keller came to a swift and decisive conclusion. With undeniable evidence from the viral video, corroborating witness statements, and a damning internal affairs report, the department had no choice but to act. Keller was officially terminated from the force, a move that was seen as both overdue and necessary. But for many, this was only the beginning. Shortly after his dismissal, criminal charges were filed against Keller, including assault and misconduct in public office. The district attorney's office issued a statement: "We cannot allow those entrusted with enforcing the law to act with such blatant disregard for justice and humanity." Officer Keller's actions were not only unprofessional, but criminal. The charges sent a powerful message, one that reverberated through the ranks of law enforcement across the nation. Meanwhile, the police department, reeling from public backlash, announced a sweeping series of reforms. Mandatory training programs focusing on de-escalation techniques and implicit bias were implemented. A new oversight committee was established, comprised of community leaders, legal experts, and former law enforcement officers, to review misconduct cases independently. The chief of police, under intense scrutiny, pledged to rebuild trust with the community. But for many, words alone were not enough. For Marcus Johnson, the resolution brought a sense of justice, but not closure. In a public statement, Marcus reflected on the experience. "This wasn't just about me. This was about every Black man, every Black woman who has ever been judged before they were seen. I wear this badge to protect and serve, and in that moment, I wasn't protected." That reality cannot be ignored. He became a vocal advocate for reform, speaking at rallies, town halls, and even congressional hearings. His words carried weight, not just because of his personal experience, but because he represented the very system that needed change. "We cannot be silent," he urged. "We cannot let this happen again." The emotional toll on Marcus was undeniable. Despite his professional demeanor, he admitted to struggling with the psychological impact of the incident. Yet, he channeled his pain into purpose, working with grassroots organizations to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the communities they served. The community, too, found its voice. The protests evolved into organized movements, demanding accountability and pushing for systemic change. Families who had lost loved ones to police violence joined the effort, sharing their stories and amplifying the call for justice. What began as outrage turned into determination, a collective effort to ensure that what happened to Marcus would not happen again. This incident served as a stark reminder of a truth many already knew: prejudice does not wear a uniform. It can exist anywhere, even among those sworn to uphold the law. For Marcus Johnson, it was a painful but necessary awakening. For the community, it was a rallying cry. And for the nation, it was yet another chapter in an ongoing struggle for equality and justice. The reforms introduced in Franklin City were seen as a step in the right direction, but they also underscored the long road ahead. As one activist put it, "Policies don't change hearts. We need accountability, yes, but we also need a cultural shift. Only then can we truly move forward." Marcus's story is not unique. It is a reflection of a larger issue, one that continues to challenge the very foundation of justice. But it is also a story of hope. Hope that through accountability, reform, and relentless advocacy, real change is possible. As we look back on this case, the question remains, how do we ensure that justice is not just an ideal but a reality for everyone? Marcus's experience reminds us that while progress is possible, it requires effort, vigilance, and a commitment to the truth. The fight is far from over, but every step forward matters. Stay with us as we continue to explore stories that challenge our perspectives, shed light on the truth, and inspire action. Because in the end, it's not just about what happens, it's about what we do next. As we come to the end of this story, we've uncovered more than just a single act of injustice. We've traced the threads of racial bias, systemic failure, and human perseverance, threads that weave into a broader narrative. A harrowing tale of how deeply prejudice can permeate even the systems designed to protect us. The events we've explored remind us of the fragility of trust in those who wear the badge and the courage it takes to confront that broken trust. Marcus Johnson's story is one of resilience, but it also forces us to ask hard questions about accountability, reform, and the role we all play in shaping a fairer society. This story is not unique to Franklin City or even to law enforcement. It is emblematic of a much larger challenge, a challenge that requires vigilance, awareness, and action to overcome. Marcus's experience sheds light on the unspoken realities faced by many, and while justice was served in this instance, it came at a cost we cannot continue to bear as a society. What about you? What are your thoughts on this incident? Have you ever witnessed or experienced something that forced you to question the systems we rely on for protection? Stories like Marcus's resonate because they are not isolated. They exist in countless variations across communities and cultures. Perhaps you've seen injustice firsthand or felt the weight of systemic bias. If so, we want to hear from you. Share your experiences and reflections in the comments below. These stories are not just about the individuals involved. They are about all of us. Each perspective adds depth to the conversation, and your voice matters. Let's continue this dialogue together. If Marcus Johnson's story resonated with you, if it made you think, or even if it made you uncomfortable, don't let it stop here. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. Start a conversation with your family, your friends, your community. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of real-life events that challenge us to reflect, question, and act. By liking this video, sharing it, and subscribing, you're not just supporting us, you're helping amplify stories that need to be heard, stories that have the power to inspire change. But this is just one story in a sea of untold truths. Next time, we'll take you into another shocking true event, one that will challenge your perceptions and leave you questioning the very fabric of the world around you. From the streets of Franklin City to another corner of the globe, we'll continue to shine a light where it's needed most. So join us next time, right here, as we delve into another story that demands attention, reflection, and action. Until then, remember, justice starts with awareness, and awareness starts with stories like these.